Welcome to the Wingmen Show. My name is Drew Brown, and my wingman, my man, the number one guy I know, Dr. Paul Thompson. What's up, brother? Welcome to the Wingmen Show. My name is Commander Drew Brown. We are floating like butterflies and stinging like bees. Rumble, you two badass jet pilots, rumble. Who's that other badass jet pilot? It's my man, my wingman, the guy who watches my six, my friend, Dr. Paul Thompson. Hello, Brother Paul.
Hello, Commander Drew. It's good to see you this morning. I'm alive, I'm awake. I'm inspired to do the show. This is good mental activity for me.
You know, we start the show off with a quote all the time. And so here's the quote for today. Reading is the kaleidoscope to the world. Reading is the kaleidoscope to the world. And that was said by Justin Blackman, who's only 13 years old. So knowledge can come from all ages. Reading is the kaleidoscope to the world. What do you think, Dr. Paul?
Yeah, I think hopefully everybody knows what a kaleidoscope is. It's I used to have one as a child. I had a couple of them. It's usually it's a tube you look through, and you move the sides left and right or up and down or whatever, and you get just a change of colors, and it kind of just like the world is opening up, and that's what reading does. It really opens up your world, whether it's just in a 13-year-old or a college professor. Reading does help you. It has a lot of good effects. It stimulates the brain, delays the onset of Alzheimer's, lets you into a world that you didn't know existed, helps you study, increases your vocabulary, changes your perspective of things. It's much better than just watching the screen all the time, actively reading. So, I'm a little bit biased, being older, didn't grow up with screens. I think it's, for me, I'm most comfortable when I have a book in my hand, if I've got to read something that's long. So it's a good exercise. Put a book in your hand, read for a few minutes.
And remember, I told you about bookstores are now coming to fruition. More bookstores are coming. My mom told me a long time ago, don't live in any city that doesn't have a bookstore. And that is so true. When you read a book, that's your movie, your own private movie. No matter what you're reading, only you see it that way, which is a really good thing, especially for good books. And page turners, you just keep reading and reading and reading. I used to do James Patterson. I just go, go, go. All right, Dr. Paul, this week's show is titled How to Say the Word Slave Correctly. And the way to say slave correctly is say enslaved. In other words, people are enslaved. Slave shouldn't be a noun. People are enslaved. And Dr. Paul taught me that. And from that moment on, when he taught me that lesson, I haven't said the word slave again. So people are enslaved because when they're free, they're not slaves anymore. So I said that because back in 1939 in Coronado, California, there was a Chinese family called the Dongs. And believe it or not, back in 1939, people would not rent to Chinese people. Not only would they not rent to Black people, but they did not like Chinese people. But Gus and Emma Thompson, who were two former enslaved people, they actually had a house in Coronado. And the reason is that they built it before the segregation rules came into play. So they were kind of grandfathered in, Dr. Paul. And what they did is that they rented to the Dongs when nobody else would, Dr. Paul. What do you think?
Yeah, that's an amazing story. And you think, in 1895, they let them stay, even though technically they did it, he established it before the racial covenants. They could have just as easily said, okay, no, you're going too. So maybe that's because they're in California and it was a new thing. It was a low population, low Black population. Yeah, I guess the family originally came from slavery, got to California, and they were going to work in the Hotel del Coronado, which is a very, very beautiful hotel, old stately place. I went through there a couple times, and it's still there. But the Dongs had an investment now that is I guess, passed through generations and has a value, a great value, and they're donating a lot of that value outside
Yeah,
of it.
Dr. Paul, when the Dongs, it was Lloyd and Ron Dong, actually, that's their names. And since nobody would rent to them before, they just sold that house and an apartment building for $8 million. And they're going to donate $5 million to Black students in San Diego at San Diego State University. And they're going to try to name the student union after Gus and Emma Thompson, Dr. Paul.
Wow, oh, that says a lot. So,
$5 million is a lot of money. And they're doing it because let me tell you what they said. I love this quote. Without the Thompsons, we would not have the education and everything else. That's what Lloyd Dong Jr. said. Education was paramount.
well, that's an extreme way of showing the gratitude. Basically, everybody needs a start, and they get someone else who is from a disadvantaged background to give them a start.
Well, it's just wonderful when you see people helping other people. And it's even better when you see people repaying what they think they should. And it wasn't to Gus and Emma Thompson because they repaid them. They bought the house and everything. What they did was they gave back to students, which I think is just wonderful. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching The Wingmen Show. If you notice those badass jets behind us, Dr. Paul actually has a catapult shooter on his picture. And we used to sit up on that catapult on the aircraft carrier and watch that guy in the yellow point his finger, and we gave them a salute, and boom, off we go, huh, Paul?
Yeah, yeah, that's the catapult officer. They call him a shooter because you shoot off the front end. That's an interesting job. He or she has got total responsibility for everything that goes on up there. Usually before you launch off, there's a series of checks. Everybody's checking each other constantly. A lot can happen just taxiing an airplane a few feet in that environment. But in any case, when you're ready to go, people signal the catapult officer. The catapult officer signals the other person shooting. Hey, off the front end you go. He actually has a lot to do, and it's even involved in the recovery of the aircraft when the airplanes are coming back.
What I like about shooters, though, when they used to salute me, I would give them a little funky wave, and you could see the little smile under their glasses before I got shot off that carrier. And at night, you couldn't see anything, so they didn't get a smile. They didn't get that good of a salute. We just turned on our lights.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you so much, everybody, for watching and listening to us, watching us on YouTube or Instagram, listening to us on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio. Thank you so much. We truly appreciate it. And we have a newsletter. And the newsletter this week is going to be how to find a hobby. How to find a hobby. And that newsletter comes at wingmenshow.com. That's wingmenshow.com. And on that website, you can actually ask us a question. And it's called the Frequent Flow Line. And this week, Dr. Paul, what a question we have this week. It's from a 22-year-old kid. Well, shouldn't be kid, young man. And he's in Corpus Christi, Texas, and he's in Navy flight training. How about that? And his question to us is that he's in the 20th week of a 22-week program, and he's been listening to us for quite a while now. And he knows we are Navy pilots, and he wants to ask us this question, because at the 20-week point, they ask you if you want to fly jets, props, or helos, because you're in initial training and everybody's flying the same airplane, which now is a T6. Dr. Paul and I used to fly T-28s. But you have this big decision to make, jets, props, or helos. And now they have even another decision to make because they have something called the E6 TACMO, which is something that we didn't have. We didn't have that choice. Dr. Paul, tell me what you think about that.
Yeah, well, that's his choice. It's good that he's in a position to have to make a choice or put out his preference. My thought, I have a bias. I go jets all the way. That's just what kind of stirs my soul and gets me pumping and moving. I think whatever you fly, I think you'll end up liking it. I've never heard anyone say I dislike this. Everybody, whatever you end up flying, you'll dislike. You'll like. I'm just my bias. My experience is jets. My bias is jets. I like jets. Jets go fast, make a lot of noise. That Takamo thing is interesting. You know what the TACAMO stands for? It means take charge and move out. I don't know who came out with this. It sounds like a 1940s, World War II motivational thing with the Andrews sisters
And
singing.
what does the E6 do, Dr. Paul?
Basically, it's a communications platform. It's in, I would call it an airborne command post, if I can use that term, but it's to relay communications between, I guess, the national security forces of the United States and those who make decisions in case of a nuclear attack. When the ground communications, other communications have been wiped out, the powers that be need to be able to speak to each other. And that's basically a communication platform. It's basically that TACAMO is the E6, not A6, the E6. It's like a retrofitted 707. It's based on the old Boeing 707. I don't think they make them anymore.
Well,
I
we'll
think
put a
about
picture
18.
up of the E6 TACMO so people on YouTube can watch it.
Yeah.
Dr. Paul, this is my trip. When he wrote, I started thinking about my FAM one, which is familiarization one. You get a FAM, you start learning about the airplane. And I'll never forget my very first flight in an airplane. It was in a T-28. And do you know we had an engine problem? And he had to do an emergency landing on my very first ride. And I was in the front going, there's no goddamn way I can do all this. And then remember, we went to formation and we had to do instruments, which was hard as hell. Instruments was so hard. Then we did aerobatics. It was great learning how to fly an airplane, Dr. Paul.
Yeah. I had flown a little before entering the Navy, and that helped a lot. But yeah, the T-28 was a for starting out. I mean, kudos to you. It was a complicated airplane.
Well,
I'd fly
Dr.
seven.
Paul, they asked me, I've never been in an airplane before. And they said, what do you want to fly, the T-34, which was a more modern, newer plane, or the T-28, which was a war beast? And they said it was harder to fly. And no kidding, my decision was I want the hardest goddamn thing I can fly, so I know that I can learn how to fly good.
Yeah, well, you got that. When I was at there was only the T-28. They didn't have the new T-34 Charlie, so it's just the big beast or nothing. So you had to master it in a very short time.
My answer to you also is jets, jets, jets. Now, I picked everybody. I wanted to fly an F-14 so bad. I wanted to fly that Tomcat. And God bless it, I got an A6 Intruder, which is even better. So I'm very happy with it. But if it's up to me, jets, jets, jets. And then you can be a badass jet pilot like Dr. Paul and myself. Dr. Paul, you know what that brings me to? That brings me to a Wingmen PSA. From the 11 facts in life, fact number 6, which is good will overcome evil, states to stay away from these 8 deadly sins: pride, envy, anger, sloth, lust, greed, gluttony. That's the 7 deadly sins, but I added another one. The 8th deadly sin: drugs and alcohol. Feel good for a minute and miserable for a lifetime. Dr. Paul, drugs and alcohol. I believe, how they say the good old book had 7 deadly sins. Well, I believe if crack was back in the biblical days, they would have added the 8th. But alcohol and drugs have killed a lot of people, and it's a very serious medical condition, addiction. And I think people really need to understand that that's nothing to play with. Addiction is slavery. We were talking about enslaved people. Well, if you get addicted to something, and I think the epitome of addiction is nicotine, Dr. Paul, you don't even get a buzz from it. All you do is get back to normal.
Well, you're right. You use the term, slave or enslaved. Yes, if you become enslaved to that stuff, it can really destroy you. And there are a lot of victims. Not only the person, not only yourself or whoever is doing it, but the people around them, maybe the people that depend on them. Families are affected by this. I've seen this personally, in my own family and with a number of others. Be careful. If you got something going on and you need to talk to somebody, talk to somebody. If it's that serious, don't just I don't want to say lay down, but just stay in a drug-induced stupor. And this kind of stuff can happen to anybody at any income level. It's not just something of the poor. Poor people are stigmatized for a lot of things. They're visible and not doing well. So it really hides everyone else who may be the same way. Some are doing it. That occurs in aviation. That has occurred in aviation with a number of people I know. I remember not to go too deep into this, but more than 40 years ago plus, I remember being at a conference and they had this, it was a pilots conference, and they had this older gentleman come up and talk about, alcoholism and aviation. And he said, I flew drunk for 30 years.
Wow.
I flew drunk for 30 years. I won't mention the airline, but he was a senior guy. And he said, I had a lot of good friends and they covered for me. And, he retired. He retired, but he came back and he said this to the group. And I couldn't really put it together. I said, how can that be? But it can be. In fact, there was an old movie, I forgot it was. It was a movie with the actor Cliff Robertson, and he was an alcoholic pilot. And he flew, but he was a good pilot and he flew forever and he had the crew that covered for him. And I always wondered, if this guy did this based on what he saw on that movie.
Well, what about Denzel's movie?
Oh, yeah, I forgot
Right.
about that.
I saw it
Yes.
3 times. I brought both of my children to see it, and that movie blew me away. Matter of fact, I don't need to see it anymore. That was an incredible movie, and Denzel did an incredible job.
You're right. There's so many movies that I completely forgot about that one.
And
Yeah.
Paul, about drugs and alcohol, we just had a personal experience with somebody we knew, and they passed away from
Yes.
drugs and alcohol. It is not a joke, is it, Paul?
No, it's not a joke. It's not a joke. You've got to get help, and these things seem to be worse when they go on for a long period of time. Uh, the
And just
situations.
remember that it's a medical problem, a medical problem. Addiction is a medical problem, and there is help, but you have to ask for it, Dr. Paul.
Yes, you have to ask for it. You have to want it, and you have to stick with the rehabilitation program. You can't just quit. That's a fact. It's been a factor too.
Well, Dr. Paul, in the Navy, we had this word called the gouge. And you say that's insider information. And I say it's shit you need to know. Here's some good gouge. What if I tell you the 10 most expensive cities to live in America for a single person? This is the amount of money you need to have just to live comfortably. And the number one city is our city, Dr. Paul, New York City. And they're estimating that you have to make about $139,000 as a single person to live comfortably. The rest of the cities are San Jose, California, Irvine, California, Santa Ana, California, Boston, you need 125,000, San Diego, Chula Vista, California, San Francisco, you need 120,000, Seattle's number 9, and Oakland, California, which is a surprise to me, is 119,000. That's a lot of money to have to make for a single person, but most of these cities actually pay more. And 5 of them are in California, Dr. Paul. Talk to me about living in an expensive city.
Wow. I mean, to be comfortable as a single person, six figures. I mean,
More
that's
than
kind of
six
incredible.
figures.
More than six figures. I was, I guess my first year in the Navy it was 4 figures. And I was thinking, and the first number was unbelievably low. That's tough. Well, all I can say is that's modern life, and it requires you really need to be an educated person to have the best shot to
No
getting
doubt,
a case
Dr.
like that.
Paul. They said in New York City, I think 40% of these people spend 50% of their income on rent. And when my daughter was living in New York, they're paying $5, $6, $7,000 a month for an apartment. I mean, a 1-bedroom apartment. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I see the price of these things. And you got to be kidding me. You got to be kidding. You see these little, I would call them storage garages, and they're more, they're $500,000 or more just for basically a closet. And you may have some wildlife living with you too for that kind of money.
You ever heard of the 50-30-20? There's a thing called 50-30-20, and they say you should take your salary, 50% of it should go for living expenses like rent, electricity, telephone, things that you need to have. 30% should go for things that you want, whatever you have, and 20% should go into investments and savings.
Hmm.
30-20, Dr. Paul.
That's good. Those are good round numbers.
So, what if I give you this news, which you're not going to believe? Do you remember LaGuardia Airport was the worst airport to drive to fly to? It was just really, it was a dilapidated airport as far as I'm concerned. Well, guess what, Dr. Paul? Times have changed. LaGuardia is one of the best airports in the country. And you and I have seen this construction going on for the past 10, 15 years, I think, huh,
Yeah.
Paul?
Yeah. They said they put $8 billion into it. I haven't been there since they fixed it up. I mean, the traffic was incredibly difficult. Flying in there wasn't the easiest thing in the world either, because it's a little airport. It was built, it was, let's see, I think they put it in operation like in 1929. It's like the same age as like Washington Dulles or Reagan. Sorry, Washington Reagan Airport, which came out like 1941. They're both little airports. But LaGuardia has like tremendous high volume. It's in a densely populated area. The traffic could be really crazy. Some of the police officers directing traffic were maybe not the Mr. Rogers type, and it could be very, very stressful going to or from.
It's
I'm
an
looking forward to
$80
it.
taxi ride.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, the taxi drivers could be interesting. Uh, I never had a bad experience. My mother did one time, but that's good for LaGuardia Airport. $8 billion can do a lot of good things, I guess.
Dr. Paul, just to go off the subject for a minute, do you remember back in New York City? I know in Harlem, and I know you grew up in Queens, born in Harlem, but remember the games we used to play in the street? Kids
Hmm.
now are sitting at home with video games. We played basketball, baseball. We had something called hot peas and butter, where you hit a belt and everybody looked for it. And if you found it, you got to beat everybody until they went back to home. Then they had Scully, where we used to do checkers on the concrete, and we had marbles and we had tops. Do you remember all those great games?
I don't remember hot peas and butter. So basically you're beating people with the belt. That's interesting. But I bet when you were doing that, I'm going to guess probably nobody got hurt, did they?
No, no, you might have got two licks because the idea was okay, you all started at a home base, which was the flagpole. One guy went and hid the belt. So when they said go, everybody went to look for the belt. But not only are you looking for the belt, you're looking at other people to see if they found the belt. And here's the cool thing: once you find the belt, you don't go right to it. You try to mess around to get people around you closer to you
Yeah.
until
Okay.
you pick it up and start wailing. And yes, you may get hit once,
Right.
maybe.
And realize that you're talking about, in your youth, your youth. And most people grew up at a certain time. That belt could be a real thing. So you're basically kind of playing with a weapon, but having experienced that weapon, you're probably kind of easy with it. You're not going to just beat anybody. But in terms of kids playing in the street, just the other day, near where I live, I was amazed to see like I was about 10 to 12 kids playing together. They're playing basketball outside in someone's driveway. I'd been here like 20, 23 years. I had never seen that before.
Oh,
It was
wow.
almost like an eclipse. It was like on a Sunday afternoon. I said, wow. Because a lot of things are stimulated when you get outside, you get the sunshine and get moving. Yeah, we played in the street. We played in the street and we called out traffic for each other, almost like air traffic controllers. There's
Oh,
a car
yeah.
coming. And sometimes
That's how
those
you
cars
play
are,
football.
yeah,
You play football by saying, go to the red car, make a left, and then go all the way to the station wagon. I'll hit you.
yeah. We're like kind of like birds, birds, anything that spooks them. Well, cars would do that. Sometimes those cars are roaring through. And other times it'd be real quiet. It's either like real quiet, nothing happened, the street is dead, or the street is alive, and you got to move. Those uh,
Oh,
those
no
fast
doubt.
those fast twitch muscle fibers were working full time then.
Yeah, but when we were kids, we stayed out all day long, even in the winter. Then we did snowballs and we made snow forts and we would go sledding in Central Park. 8 kids to one sled, but we would
Right.
still go sledding. But we
Yeah.
always had something to do. And I think my favorite one, do you remember Shoot the Pump? When they would take a tin can, you scrape off the top and the bottom so you just have a cylinder, and then you would open one of those New York City fire hydrants and you would try to shoot the pump, meaning you would try to put your can up there and shoot it like up high in the air. And it was so powerful. Usually the cans just flew away. But if you ever got a good one, you could call it Shoot the Pump.
That I never saw. And the people that want to shoot you is probably the firemen that have to come and turn the
Well, we
hydrants
only
on.
did that when it was so hot. I don't think anybody really cared.
Yeah, that's a summertime activity. But those firemen, they were not happy.
No, I'm sure they
I
weren't.
showed up.
Well, the name of our show is called The Wingmen Show. And that means we have somebody who takes care of somebody else. And we have a great wingman for you today. It's from the students of Providence College. Dr. Paul, why don't you tell us about our wingman today?
Yeah, this is a wingman. This is do unto others as you would like them to do unto you. There are a lot of people that are working, I guess, everywhere around the world, but let's just take the United States here, and from other countries. And their primary mission is to, I guess, get themselves together, get their families together. But most of the time, they're sending money home, wherever home is. I'm very familiar with that world. This is a case where there are there are really two wingmen, Daniel Singh and Brandon Reichert. Daniel Singh and Brandon Reichert are students at Providence College. They're at the Raymond Hall campus. And what they did was very, very simple. There's a gentleman there, a Mr. James Magaji, who is a security guard. This security guard had endeared himself to the students at this college. And they found out that Mr. Mogagi was from Nigeria and he hadn't seen his family in 11 years and desperately wanted to see them. So on their own, Brandon Reichert and Daniel Singh started a GoFundMe campaign. And their goal was to raise $3,000 for him to do this. When they finished, it was $30,000. It's not bad. They can do some for me too. They raised $30,000 to not only, help him go see his family, but to do some other things too. I don't know what
That's a lot of pocket money.
That's a lot of pocket money, and I don't think he makes that much. So this is a fantastic thing to do. It's a simple act of kindness, and I think they're freshmen. So you can think also, do unto others, you have them do unto you. They could have done that for themselves. They could have done pretty good, 30 grand, but they gave it to this man who needed it.
Paul, did you see the video? Because
Yeah.
it got a tear in my eye.
Yeah.
When he found out what he got, he fell to the floor and started to cry and was so, so appreciative of this gesture.
Yeah. Just an unexpected act of kindness. Basically, he hit the lottery without buying a ticket. So he was really surprised.
Well, actually, he was a really good guy and he got paid for being a really good guy. Whatever you do in life comes back to you, Dr. Paul. Well, Dr. Paul, for you and all our listeners, whatever you think is important, whatever you think is beautiful, and whatever makes you happy, may you have that today and forever. I pray for peace.
I pray for peace too. And we appreciate all those who listen, like, and share our message. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit the like button, click the notification icon so you'll get an alert every time a new episode comes out. And share this with somebody. Share this to somebody. Just shoot them something. Don't shoot them all kinds of memes and crazy stuff. Shoot them something that they can listen to for a few minutes and maybe change their perspective.
Thank you once again, Dr. Paul Thompson, my friend. Thank you for your love, your time, and that's something that we won't ever get back. I want to thank all the listeners too. Thank you so much for doing the show, Dr. Paul. We're jamming.
Well, thank you, Mr. Drew, for inviting me on. Always good to talk to you. And ladies and gentlemen, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this podcast or any of the podcasts. If you're looking at YouTube, They say smash the like button. Don't smash it. Just press it gently and refer to use as a link to all your friends. You can also look at us on our website, wingmenshow.com, WINGMEN show, SHOW.com, altogether, wingmenshow.com. And we hope to see you in the future. Thanks again, Mr. Drew.
Oh, you're welcome. And we're still floating like butterflies and stinging like bees. Rumble, you badass jet pilots, rumble. May there be peace on earth and goodwill towards all men and women.